Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 205th Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, our panel will discuss activism. Activism takes many forms, and a variety of people are referred to as activists. Our panel will drill down on activism as it is seen in today's culture. Our panel today includes Bryan Laubaugh, President of R&B Financial Services. Excuse me, where's Tom?
We lost Tom.
We lost one of our panelists.
We lost Tom.
We're gonna
Just soldier on.
We're gonna do that.
Keep moving.
Okay, Bryan Laubaugh, President of R&B Financial Services. Then we have Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, retired senior research chemist. Tom Finley, Tom has disappeared on us. But anyway, Tom was a retired vice president at Rubbermaid Incorporated. And we have Patty Haskins, former member of the Wadsworth City Council and the faculty of the Wadsworth High School, right, Patty?
Yes.
Bryan, some of the things that come to mind, what are some of the things that come to mind when you think of the word activism or hear someone referred to as an activist?
Well, first, John, I would like to make sure everyone's aware that today is your birthday, and we all here wish you a happy birthday and many, many more. Thank you for all you're doing and the effort that it takes to put this together. Obviously, we had some technical difficulties earlier today, but we're here, and we want you to know that we appreciate all that you do and creating this forum and giving us the opportunity to speak. When I think of activism, for me, it's taken on somewhat of a negative connotation lately, in that the activism is single purpose, and it's to the point where when you start looking at some of the paid activists, they have just one thing that they keep, in essence, beating you over the head with. One of the things that I've been very disappointed with is some of the activism that's taken place recently surrounding people that consider themselves activists protesting outside of Supreme Court justices' homes. There is a law about that. We're waiting on the DOJ to enforce the law. It's something that we have kept in our society. The judiciary, judges and prosecutors and things of that nature have really not been subject to this type of activism, where they're being followed into restaurants, where restaurants that are serving them are being canceled or boycotted because they served a sitting Supreme Court justice. I think that type of activism has gone totally off the rails, and I don't support that at all. I'm all for people with their right to protest, peaceful protests, signage, doing all that kind of stuff, but basically stalking people to get their point across, I'm not in favor of that at all. I think it leads to very, very dangerous situations. I'm not sure if you remember, but there was an individual some time ago that decided that he was going to take it upon himself, and he went to a baseball field and shot up some Republican lawmakers. One almost lost his life. And, I think he probably thought he was doing the right thing. I think he thought he was, pushing his points home by doing that. I just am not in favor of that at all. I think we need to step back from some of this activism, because it's taken a big, giant step forward in that now through social media, they do their best to ruin people's lives. I just am not in favor of that at all. I'm all for peaceful protests and activists when it comes to the Green New Deal or the environment, all that kind of stuff. I'm not for people going out there chaining themselves to power plants and all that kind of stuff, or blocking traffic. I just don't think that furthers their cause. So that's where I sort of land on activism. I'm all for it, but there needs to be guardrails. and they need to respect the laws of the land when they take their activism to the streets. I just don't believe in this, the ends justify the means type of mentality that's out there. I just can't get behind that type of activism.
Hey, we appreciate that. Ron, what's your take?
Bryan bring up some points in which I am basically in agreement with. In general, I'm for activists. I think I mentioned before that I think people need to be passionate about what they believe in, and that passion may take the form of a variety of things. Obviously, the dangers are there if it goes into the area of let's call it incivility, where people begin destroying property and say stalking individuals, that sort of thing. It's a difficult thing. Obviously, it has led to such things as violence and rioting and trashing of storefronts and kind of thing. Whether that's the individuals there are directly protesting whatever that everybody else is protesting, or whether they just have another axe to grind there, I don't think that's entirely clear in a lot of cases. But yeah, that's true. I think there I kind of identify three kinds of activism, and there's an obvious overlap between them. And I use it from my own experience on this. I think firstly, there's the thing of you become interested and passionate about something, and you do things like sign petitions, and you post on social media, and you send emails to your family and friends and your representatives, and you phone the congressman. I've done all those. A second stage is you go out and physically put yourself out in there. You go on some marches, or you go downtown to carry out a protest. Again, we have the right to peaceably assemble and try to keep it peaceable. And I've done that. I went to a couple of marches in Washington, D.C. and one in downtown Akron, and in the occasion of the First and Second Gulf War, because I'm passionate about peace and anti-war measures. So I've done that. The third way, I think, is where you personally get involved with something you're passionate about. John, you started Right and Left. You started civilitymatters.org, and because you're passionate about the idea of that civility needs to happen in the political era and in all areas of life, and that's very commendable. The only one that I recently have involved with, I've been on several boards of places that trying to better the community in various ways. But recently, about 5 or 6 years ago, I stood up in our church's annual meeting and tasked our leadership and our minister and the rest of us with looking into the possibility of becoming an open and affirming congregation in terms of the LGBTQ community and an episode there, and kept pushing that. And eventually we did have a couple of extended education systems where we discussed and discerned, and it culminated in being publicly about that. We have, if those out there wants to follow up on that, look at our website, www.firstmennonite.com, and on the homepage is a brief statement of that policy with a link to a full statement of it. And I'm very happy that I could do that. We're kind of ahead of the curve with the Mennonite congregation. They're just now coming around to the point where they can allow some limited action by our clergy. But we are among a minority, but a growing minority in trying to be fair in this. So I think there's those three ways. There's obviously overlap in between them. I agree with Bryan that it goes way too far some cases, and particularly in the social media where you see it. Most of my friends on social media are liberals, but not all. I have relatives who we have frequent interest and disagreements. Other friends, I have a friend in the military who we certainly don't agree on a lot of things, but we can talk and we can be civil about it. And I think it's necessary. I think it's important for an individual to be passionate about what they believe in, to try to take some sort of action to make that happen, to make the world a better place as they see it. The other thing in terms of the public thing is that it's got to be based on fact. the folks that decided they would go down and walk around the Capitol and inside the Capitol on January 6th of last year weren't following from any kind of factual basis. So you have to be careful about that. You have to be intelligent about it. And I think you should do it. I think you have to be careful about it.
Patty, what are your thoughts?
I agree with everything that's been said so far. Activism, I believe, is, as Bryan said, is taking on a bad connotation, when actually I think activism is something that's good. If we want to have problems solved in this world, people can't just sit back on their sofa and watch TV and yell at the TV. They have to take some type of action to bring problems to light. In the entire civil rights movement was brought about by the activism of people within this country to take a situation that was bad and to try to make it better. The problem that we have is that some people become so active that they become violent, and there's no place for that. That does not accomplish anything, and it actually only, I think, hurts their particular cause. Bryan mentioned the protesting outside of the Supreme Court justices' homes and following them into restaurants and publishing their names and addresses. That's not going to accomplish anything as far as at least changing the mind of that justice, in my opinion. The rioters who showed up on January 6th in their insurrection of the Capitol did not change the minds of those particular people within Congress. I think that only worked to hurt their stated goals as to trying to get Pence to bring in the different sets of electors and so forth. He wasn't going to change his mind and actually became more defiant upon that. We have to learn to work as a civilized country and as civilized people, and where we can express our views, but not violently try to damage other people or property. As Ron said, there's ways for activism that you can use. You can write your congressman. You can publish a letter to the editor. You can post on social media, only doing it civilly, if at all possible. You can actually run for office yourself and attempt to make changes in various policies that you agree or disagree with. But you do not have to attack people. You do not have to throw paint on pregnancy centers. You don't have to go out and stop women from going into Planned Parenthood. It goes both ways. We need to act as a civil society and to examine problems, but not do it on an emotional level. And this is the only way things get done.
Tom, it's really nice to see you. You've found a way to get back on. Can you hear me all right, Tom?
Yes, I can, John. Sorry about that.
Okay, you have some thoughts about activism?
Yes, I do. I think the Constitution of this country encourages the participation of citizens in the government. I don't know how you do it without activism. It's when it takes on prejudicial tones and moves away from facts and information that it becomes something more than activism to me, and is therefore now a dangerous thing to happen. But it is a necessity for democracy to continue.
One of the problems that I have is that I don't know what to do with people that I disagree with vehemently. Excuse me. I'm all about civil discussions, as you all know. I don't know what to do about white supremacy. If I'm asked to engage with someone who has blind faith that they're absolutely correct, that white people are superior to black people and brown people, and that unless you're white, you don't really have all the rights that you should have. I don't know how to deal with that in a civil way. Maybe somebody can help me with that.
John, I think one of the things you can do as an adult is just to recognize that there are some people you'll never change their minds. And if they've put your friendship on the line because of your views, I've never said to anybody, you're just so far off the spectrum here that I just can't be your friend. I think you should just agree to disagree and realize that you might not be able to change that person's opinion, and let them wallow in whatever feelings they have. We've gotten to the point, it seems, that if some people are so strident that they defriend people. They can't, you're no longer my friend if you don't believe in X, put whatever in there. I've just never gotten to that point. I have friends that are liberal. I have friends that might be off the scale, right or left, but I still try to be their friends. I might not agree with them all the time or at all. And I think I can still get past that, and still be, a friend. And so that's how I view it.
It's a matter of respecting each other's opinions. As Bryan said, you're never going to change. Some people, you will never change their opinion. And all you can do is try to respect each other's opinions, especially if they're your friend.
A white
Very
racist,
honestly, if they can't,
Patty, you could respect the opinion of a white racist?
respect that they have opinions. That doesn't mean I have to agree with them. If I can't respect them, or at least give them the opportunity to listen to them, then, or vice versa, then perhaps we shouldn't be friends, because I think that goes a long way with that. The other thing that you can do is just lead by example. And hopefully, maybe someday along the line, that person with whom you disagree, that is the white supremacist, might see that, well, hey, maybe I have been thinking wrong. Wouldn't necessarily count on it, but that's one of the least, at least that's a little bit that you can do to get your opinion across.
I was turned on to a book recently that I'm just partway through, written by a history professor. The title of it is quite interesting. It's called Jesus and John Wayne. And this person is investigating how the rise of the gun culture, the rise of extreme conservatism, to use maybe not a very accurate word, but the idea that the white supremacy, the idea of the patriarchal society has arisen, and how it has affected things like the ability to accept somebody like Donald Trump. And she uses, in this case, John Wayne, who became kind of a hero to that, as the South went from being solidly Republican to solidly Democratic to solidly Republican, more or less, about how that people were looked at. She takes it all the way back to Teddy Roosevelt, really, and politically, about Teddy, when Teddy was always considered kind of a sissy elitist. He goes out west and becomes the cowboy president, comes back, founds the Rough Riders, and some people think he was probably partly responsible for starting the Spanish-American War, but that's a whole other story. But he became so macho, so masculine, so patriarchal, and that whole thing pervaded society, very strong in the 50s, and very strong still today. Can you explain things like the rise of gun culture and people like John Wayne, who was certainly not a moral paragon? He was twice married and divorced. He was a womanizer. He gambled, he drank, swore, but yet he was considered, here's the hero of the sands of Iwo Jima, you were at Red River out fighting the Indians and getting rid of those nasty immigrants and people. So it's very fascinating, and I think it explains quite a lot about our present mentality. You might want to look it up. It's an interesting thing, available on Amazon.
It sounds like it may be overdoing John Wayne just a tad bit there.
And you know what? I couldn't disagree more with Ron on some of the things that he said, but I still consider him a friend. And we could debate white supremacy, John Wayne, the gun culture, and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, Ron's going to have his opinions about it, and I'm going to respect him for it. And, you know, I think it's great that he's reading a history book. I'm just finishing up a book on Grant, written by Chernow. And it's pretty enlightening as far as what was going on, you know, back in the day, you know, with the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, and then Andrew Johnson as president, and, you know, talk about a racist. I mean, you know, that guy.
Grant had the additional problem of the fact that his wife's parents were slave owners. And he, of course, did not come from that background. And he was taking on this, and was fighting a war to stop slavery. And his wife's family were vehemently opposed to
I'm
having.
sorry, who are you talking about now? Johnson?
Ulysses Grant.
Yeah.
Grant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's great that you read a history book. I mean, read as much history as you can, and you can really see where some of these things take root and that kind of stuff.
Okay,
but I
well,
still like Ron. I still like him.
I want to test your love for Ron on this one. We have probably the most difficult activist situation going when we're talking about global warming or climate change or abrupt climate change, whatever the label is these days. There are, you look back at the early predictions back in the 70s and 80s that just did not come true. New York is not covered with water like it was expected it would be. But
It's getting there.
It seems to me, pardon me?
It's getting there.
I can't
The
find
oceans are
any.
still rising.
Well,
The ice caps are still melting year by year, more and more.
where? The North or the South Pole?
Both.
No, they're not. Well, that's.
Yes, they are. I've seen the data recently now. NASA data on that.
Yeah, and the other data says that it's getting colder at the South Pole, but
You mentioned climate change, and Bryan also mentioned the Congressional Soft Baseball game, which is actually going to be held today.
yes,
And there are climate people that
Activists.
are going to be activists that are going to be protesting the game today, which is kind of I believe, like Ron, that climate change is existing and that it's a problem. However, for them to be protesting at a baseball game, which is going to raise $1.5 million for charity in order to get their point across, I question whether that is an appropriate use of their time, and if it will accomplish anything. So
I guess my point about the climate change controversy is that it's no longer, or maybe it never has been, a matter of fact. We've got some facts and we've got other facts that disagree with them. We've got scientists on both sides of the argument. But I think it's settled into a belief rather than knowledge.
Well, when I look at the graphs of temperature change over the last 100 and 150 years, as records have been kept, and I look at the projection back into that, looking at the ice cores and the glaciers and that sort of thing, that's a fact I see. I see that changing.
Well, I don't think there's any disagreement that our planet Earth is getting warmer in some places. The disagreement is what's causing it, and I don't think anyone really knows for sure. That's where the belief system comes in rather than hard data. But anyway, I just wanted to throw out the idea that there's a difference between knowledge and belief. And that sometimes we get into some pretty hard arguments over things that we want to be true rather than things that we know are true.
Well, you have to believe in knowledge, John.
Well, I know. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Whose knowledge are we talking about now?
Talking about the data.
Well, come on. I started this argument for you, Bryan. You're talking about your love affair with Ron.
The thing is, I think what's happened with the global climate change is the activists have overrun the moderate voices. I think most people would feel that we have to be good stewards of the planet, that we need to do things to broaden our portfolio of things that create energy, wind, solar, nuclear. I mean, I'd love to have that argument with some of these diehard people that chain themselves to a nuclear facility. I mean, some of the cleanest energy ever. We put it in submarines and we send those guys to the bottom of the sea for days on end. None of them come back glowing. And all these types of things. But the activists have taken over and it's their way or no way. And I don't think that gets anything done.
Well, I just found a piece of data yesterday that I thought was surprising. There are nearly 15,000 registered environmental nonprofits in the U.S., and they're making a lot of money. And I am, being the owner of a nonprofit, I'm a little sensitive to the fact that nonprofits have gotten a bad name. They're not nonprofit, they're not profiteers, I think. But in a lot of cases, Black Lives Matter being one of them. But thank you very much for a difficult time today. Tom, I'm sorry that we got sort of screwed up technically on your side, but we'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Happy birthday again,
Take care.
John.
Have a good day, John.
Thank you
Have a
very
good
much.
day.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.